now.
Yeah, right. Well, let's come to that, guys. Right, because what a shameful way. I mean, look, it wasn't a great game of football. Let's get that right. But it was. You couldn't take your eyes off it, regardless. I'm struggling to think of a decent shot at goal from either side throughout the entire 2 hours of football. But for it to end like this, with a bunch of prepubescent goons kind of dragging Rangers from the despair of a defeat into a full-blown disgrace. It's really unedifying. It's really unedifying. You guys were there. What did you make it?
Well, first of all, I mean, you could sense it was coming. You know, as soon as Celtic scored their winning penalty, our eyes were straight onto the Celtic supporters just to see the celebrations, and you could see at that point that more than a handful, a couple, more than a couple of dozen probably had spilled onto the track side.
But then there's a fair whack that spilled onto the pitch.
Then onto the pitch, and then one or two gestures, waves, made it hope support, and that was all the invitation that a lot of the Rangers fans needed. It seemed initially that the security, the police had managed to hold back that sort of first attempts, but then out of nowhere, you then had, as you can see from the pictures, dozens and dozens and dozens of fans, and at that point, I must admit, I feared the worst. I thought this could really kick off. This could become.
I mean, look at that! Look at that clown throwing a flare in.
I think the police, the stewards, deserve a huge amount of credit. They did their best to, once it got to that point, to get, as you say, these louts off the pitch. But this is a shameful day of Scottish football. I was there in 2016 at Hampden when we saw sort of similar scenes. The Scottish Cup final, and I thought that would be a sort of a line in the sand. But that, I mean, it doesn't seem this sort of culture of whether it's the ultras group or just fan disorder is going away. It seems now to be getting celebrated. We see a lot of these clips online, and this was a story that, like, I think Mick, you did a lot of it in the build up in terms of the allocation story. Celtic pushed hard to get the full Broomloan again. My understanding was that Rangers agreed to it on the basis that it would be reciprocated in the event that should Rangers find themselves getting drawn in a cup tie to go to Parkhead, they would get the full 20% or whatever, close to the old allocation. I think we can safely say those chances are absolutely scrubbed.
That agreement's getting chucked in a bin, that's for sure.
I'm having none of this again, because that was, as close as you can probably get to a full-scale riot, and there could have been properly ugly scenes. I think a few of them making the charge, having ran the length of the pitch, got up to within sort of striking distance, and then thought, maybe a quick retreat.
We saw a wee bit of this, they talking about that cup final. It's the tin pot hardman stuff they run, and you get 70 yards to think about what they're doing. I mean, you get to 70 yards, think, oh wait a minute, what happens now? 150 cops and 7,000 Celtic fans in front of me. Maybe that's not the best idea.
Hold on while I put my Spider-Man mask on.
Hold me back here, hold me back. I mean, ridiculous behaviour. I mean, listen, as we're talking about, we've all done it. We've all said we want it to return to the kind of the full allocations and the atmosphere it brings and all that stuff. And a chunk of them have ruined it for everybody else. Let's be honest. We can forget about it. We're back to the kind of, I wouldn't be surprised it's back to the 750 fans away games now in the first sale feature, because it's too much hassle. And
do you know the worst it was, guys?
You've seen Celtic in terms of Parkhead. They've not obviously the Green Brigade have been sort of locked out of there for the last 3-4 months now. I wouldn't be surprised after that performance today that you don't see the Union Bears getting a sort of similar treatment from the owners here. I mean, Andrew Kavanagh was at the game today. I saw him at the trackside match. He's not going to be impressed with that.
By the way, the camera's panned in. Yeah. The camera's panned in on Andrew Kavanagh, and he was standing in the director's box, and his face was just aghast.
Yeah,
I think he was horrified with what he was seeing.
I mean, that's a guy who's got ambitions, along with the San Francisco 49ers, to turn this club back into a European force and make it something that can be marketed across the world. Scenes like that aren't going to help. So I would be in no way surprised to see Union Bears from a Rangers perspective getting into some bother and maybe coping some sort of ban or something like that, just in the
And
summer.
quite right too.
Yeah,
Quite right too. And by the way, the cops should be all over this. The cops should be all over this, trying to identify these wee neds and get them banned. Football banning orders, get them out. Because it's just sickening behaviour. And by the way, there's young kids that are there, and I'm not talking about the ones with the Spider-Man mask. There's young kids there. That's a terrifying experience for people. And I'm sure Andrew Kavanagh and the American whole sporting culture is built around designing, like, it's a day out for the family. That is just sheer thuggery. And by the way, there will be ramifications, and there should be ramifications for it. It's shambolic stuff.
It's going to take time to unpack it as well, because with like,
but Mick, here's one of the things, right? Was it Thomas Jvankra comes off the pitch and he's interviewed, flash interview immediately after the final whistle. There's blood on his shirt.
I was watching that. I watched him at the side. Like, I must admit, it's hard to tell what's going on, right? But it looked to be that somebody was involved with somebody with Celtic's staff. Somebody in a Celtic tracksuit was involved. Chankara was down there, and there's some sort of skirmishing, and shears are pulling folk away and all that stuff. So there was definitely something involving him. And I remember a Celtic staff down by the touchline, and that was someone who we think it came from the main stand rather than coming from behind the goal. So I say, and then there's also reports we're hearing about certain things, graffiti and broken chairs in the Broom Lawn as well.
Certainly, there were
this is going to be one that's going to be taking a long time to unravel. We're going to be getting an absolute avalanche of statements eventually, and investigations, and you think, I was watching it unfolding, and I kept thinking, and someone mentioned it after the game, before my time, but the footage of the 80 Cup final, and the Arsenal person going, "Oh, and here comes the horses." Now here's the horses.
I mean,
that's what was missing was horses.
I mean, it seems like the Tartan Army down at Wembley. At one point, they were trying to get the goals down as well. So, I mean,
it was ridiculous.
Just chaos. Absolute chaos. So.
Ridiculous.
See, just before we actually go into the... Sorry, go on, Mick.
These two teams meet about 6 times a season. Are they going to have a bit of chill at some point, these fans? I mean, they do this a lot. It's not the first time in 100 years they've faced each other. They play each other 6 games a season practically, and they can't behave. It's it's ridiculous. But listen,
before we actually talk about the football, we've got tons of comments.
Was it football?
There's tons of comments coming in. If you're watching at home, feel free to get involved in the conversation. Let us know what you thought of today's game. McKenna, who's a big Hearts fan, says, dock them both 10 points each.
Call the league.
But Marzuno says, pitch invasions, object throwing has become commonplace last few years. SFA's let it get out of control. Disaster waiting to happen. SFA needs to introduce severe sanctions. I mean, you quite rightly said, Keith, that police should be all over the people that run the pitch.
The SFA's stance on this is the authorities should be clamping down.
Right.
The SFA stance is they're trying to do whatever they can do, whatever's in their gift to do. But ultimately, when people are behaving and breaking the law, which is what they're doing, you need the authorities to that's the tool the police have got in the courts and the judiciary system. It's got the banning order, the football banning order. But I think I was speaking to Mike Mulroney at the start of this season, and he was talking about the kind of unruly behaviour and this rise of the sort of ultra culture. And he was making the point that I think there'd been in the previous 12 months, only one banning order handed out to any supporter or a supporter in Scottish football. That doesn't strike me as being anywhere close to being enough. And, Rangers have got a problem with that section. They need to address that and deal with it. I'm sure that Andrew Kavanagh will be, desperate and determined to do that. But also, the authorities, the police, they've got to wade into this. They've got to get some bodies. They should be busy through the week, and people should pay the price for this.